welcome back to another Saturday night of the Fringe Radio Show on the 18th of August on a hot, smoky night here in Salt Lake City. Want to say hello to everybody out there. Our sponsors, as always, Gung Ho Energy Shots. Gung Ho provides real brain energy, not just a caffeine buzz. Go to www.k-talk.com and take a look at Gung Ho. Our other sponsor, Prime Hobbies. For the very best in radio control hobby supplies, get out and enjoy the outdoors with a new hobby. Radio control cars and trucks are great for the camping trips. Helicopters are fun for around the backyard, and RC boats are great for out on the lake. For the very best in RC hobby supplies, go to primehobbies.com. Our new sponsor is Utah Go Green Carpet Cleaning. They're a new company here in town that's using the Host dry cleaning system. They do restoration work, old construction cleanup, new construction cleanup. Had them out to the house. They do an outstanding job. Utah Go Green Carpet Cleaning. Their number 801-808-3228. 808-3228. Tell them you heard their ad on the Fringe Radio Show. Another one of our sponsors. Boy, we're getting a list of them here. Sweet Home Chicago Pizzeria, 1442 East Draper Parkway, 123rd South in Draper, Utah, just east of 1300 East. 1300 East. They have quite a few coupon offers on Tuesday nights from 5 to 9. Buy one pizza, get a free pizza. Tell Joe that Fringe Radio sent you. You can get a hold of Sweet Home Chicago Pizzeria at 801-545-0455. Tonight, it's Mr. Lee and myself in the studio. Carol and Caitlin are down south enjoying an evening out near the Provo Lake area, and another couple of weeks they'll be back in, so I want to say hello to them. As always, we're live on the Inception Radio Network. You can get on the InceptionRadioNetwork.com, chat live with us during the show. If you have questions to ask our guest or have some comments, go ahead to InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Log into the chat and go ahead and ask away. We watch the chat room throughout the show. As always, we'd like to thank Jack and Amanda Denton at Grayson Paranormal Society for all their help with the Fringe Radio Show blogging. They are a ghost hunter group in Grayson, Texas. The Fringe Radio Show covers anything related to ghosts, paranormal, UFOs, abductions, science fiction, Bigfoot afterlife, near-death experiences, science fiction movies, old horror movies, anything shrouded in mystery. We even talked Titanic. We're going to have a Hindenburg expert on, Jimmy Hoffa expert on in the next couple of months. We've got a lot of guests lined up, a lot of great people. As always, we ask all callers to be respectful of everybody's beliefs and their opinions. You can go out to k-talk.com, go to the host or the schedule page, or go to k-talk.com/Fringe Radio, and you can get to our page. You follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and we post a lot of stuff out there. It's been a little bit slow with the summer, but we'll be putting a lot more out on Facebook and Twitter as we go into fall. If you have a story, experience, sighting, like to come on the show, contact us via the webpage. We'd also like to say hi to all our friends at Right Left Turn Radio. They're a group of ghost adventure aficionados. They have a nightly radio show on Blog Talk Radio, Right Left Turn Radio. Last week, we had author Jill Amarai Amara on. Her website, www.simeon7d.com, and we had filmmaker Greg Newkirk on. They are doing a new film about ghost hunting, UFO hunting, Bigfoot hunting. You can go out to our website and find their link on the Fringe Radio page. It was a good show. I had a lot of fun having them on, and we're going to keep them coming back and keep everybody updated. Next week on the 25th, can't believe it, September is right around the corner, we're going to have UFO investigator Tom Carey. His website is roswellinvestigator.com, so Tom will be with us next week. Tonight, we are honored to have Peter Crapia on. Peter is, we'll find out exactly the role he plays, but he is a big part of Bachelors Grove Cemetery, back in the Chicago area. Bachelors go, actually I'm from Chicago, grew up literally down the street, and one of the most haunted places in the country, one of the most unique cemeteries in the country. And we've got Pete on the show for tonight. We're honored to have him on. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring Peter on. Pete, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to K-Talk Radio.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on, Pete. I appreciate you giving up your Saturday night to be on the air.
Oh, that's fine. It sounds fun.
It will. We'll have a fun night. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement with Bachelors Grove, and just I got a ton of questions from you. And again,
Sure.
I'm from Oak Forest, so kind of fun to reminisce from somebody from the same area.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, the way I got involved, I grew up with paranormal activity in my house, so I've always been intrigued by it. And then one day I heard about this haunted little place out in the woods. So, I go and I visit, and I'm into local history and the paranormal. So after doing that, it just kind of snowballed because there was really little information about the place. So I just spent many, many months, developed into years of research. And then I realized, this place needs to be, cared for. So I was trying to do stuff with that. And eventually launched a website because I figured, everybody needs this information, and I need to contact people that know the area and get some more information. So
Right.
The web would be perfect.
Gotcha. So are you an active ghost hunter in the Chicago area?
I wouldn't call myself a ghost hunter. I'm interested in that field. Actually, I'm kind of serious about it, but I don't go to a lot of locations.
Right.
I guess if it wasn't for my personal experiences out there, I probably wouldn't believe too much in all the stories. But because I know some weird stuff that does go on out there, I like to focus on that spot just by itself.
Gotcha.
So the more I learn about the whole area, I feel the more maybe I can better understand what's going on.
Gotcha. So when did you, well, I guess you could tell us about your experiences. I could tell you about mine. I mean, I grew up on the south side. I grew up in Oak Forest I moved to Salt Lake it's been 20 years, and I'm in my 50s now. But I've been out there several times. I remember seeing a lot of things. I saw some unique stuff. What kind of got you, what happened to you out there?
Well, okay, like I said before, there was very little I knew about the place. And, excuse me. And so one day, you're familiar with the layout, but I'm sure a lot of listeners are not, but there's a pond nearby next to a road. And I was driving down this road, passing by this pond. I want to take a quick look at the cemetery as I drive by. And there used to be a car pull-off there. And, at least the time there was.
Right.
It's gone today. But anyway, there was this car parked there, and it was in my view, and I'm kind of looking around it just to get a view. And, I pass on by, and there's a tree line, so there's no sense to keep on looking. So my head turns back, and I look in my mirror, and there's no car there. And I whip my head around real fast, and I'm looking, I'm like, no, and I said a few choice words to myself. I said, no, there was a car. What's going on,
Right.
And, that was just one incident of a phantom car. And then I find out years later that people experience phantom cars there. And we have a local guy who unfortunately passed away recently named Richard Crow. And he spotted his phantom car in that same area, that spot where I, saw my first phantom car.
Right.
So, it's pretty amazing. It boggles the mind. And, I don't know if I want to call it haunted, but there is something weird with the area.
Right. Well, and it's, I mean, I know that there's a lot of, and for the people that are listening, if they want to, again, we're talking about something that's 1,600 miles away, but definitely Bachelors Grove when you talk about ghost hunting and paranormal activity and stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely one of the big ones, probably one of the top 5 in the country that pop up. But your site is bachelorsgrove.com, and it's an awesome site. It's just got a ton of stuff up there, news articles like crazy. One thing that I found interesting about the site, and we could kind of talk a little later in the show about, going through the place, is people that I shouldn't say are confused, but so many conflicting stories of buildings that were there, things that were there. What Pete, you've done all the digging in the history. I mean, what's kind of a little history timeline? Of course, the website talks about it, but if you're listening in the car or whatever and not on a computer, where did Bachelors Grove come from? What's kind of the history of the whole place?
Well, it's actually in a bit of a dispute because you've got people who moved into the area who were in charge of naming stuff. You know, they came from royalty and stuff, so they were in charge of the towns and that. So they had their version of things, of how they called it, Bachelors Grove. They held Bachelors Hall, where they had parties and stuff like that. And then you've got another part of history, though, that before they moved into the area, you know, there were religious groups that knew of the name already, and it's in their text. And they knew to visit these areas. And so, you know, there is a, you know, well, I should probably back up. The areas, when they would be named, they would usually be named, like when they say something like Bachelor's Grove, Cooper's Grove, something like that, it was usually named after somebody's last name.
Okay.
So that is more appropriate. So there was a Batchelder family in the area at the time. And, you know, that's, you know, the older maps, if you look at some of the older maps, the way it's spelled, it would coincide with those families, things like that. So that, you know, historically speaking, I put more weight on the family part than a group of guys who just kind of want to make a name for themselves.
Sure.
There's a lot to talk about with this, but let's see, where am I going with it? Now, as far as the cemetery itself is concerned, that's where it gets confusing.
Okay. Hey,
now,
Pete, we're gonna take just a quick couple-minute commercial break. Why don't you get yourself a soda, and we'll be back in just a minute. We're honored tonight to have our guest, Peter Crapia, on. His website, bachelorsgrove.com, KTKK AM630 in Salt Lake City. Pete, we'll be right back with you on the other side of these messages. All right, everybody, and we're back again. Our guest tonight, Peter. Pete, how do you say your last name?
It's pronounced Crapia.
Crapia. Okay.
That's okay. Everyone gets it wrong.
Looks like crappie when you look at it at first.
A little bit. Yeah.
Peter Crapia, his website, bachelorsgrove.com, one of the most haunted cemeteries in the country. So we're talking a little bit about the history. About 1820s, 1830s is kind of when things started happening. Not happening, but it started coming together.
History,
there?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. A lot of immigrants came from all over the world. People started migrating to Chicago or to the Chicago area. And then let's kind of pick back up. So Bachelor's Grove, far south side, back then obviously was probably out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was just all prairie or woodland. You know, a lot of Indian territory as well. So they were sharing areas where the Indians were.
Gotcha.
Let's see. You know, as far as the history of the cemetery wasn't really there until around 1838.
Okay.
Okay. So, and they had actually a couple of cemeteries, a couple of schools. You know, but Bachelor's Grove was kind of instrumental in helping to bring people to, like, let's say, Blue Island, that's local in the area, and that from there, I mean, that just kind of snowballed into a bunch of nice things.
Right.
But you know, back to Bachelor's Grove in general. You know, the cemetery itself actually was originally called Everton's Cemetery.
Okay.
Now, that comes from a settler out in a place called Lamont, Illinois. Now, we don't know too much about the guy, but we know he came to Bachelor's Grove and he had some land and he decided to donate some property when somebody had passed away nearby. You know, so, you know, people in the area started to really kind of use that spot, that cemetery. So that did bring in more people into the Bachelor's Grove area. You know, it's pretty rich in history. You know, I didn't give you any talking points, but it's
well, going through the site. I mean, obviously for many years now. Was there a hospital there? Again, when I take a look at it, when I look at things, again going back to my teen years and way back when I actually visited the place, I actually remember a structure of some sort being there at one time.
A structure near
the cemetery.
Near the cemetery itself. You're talking like maybe houses or something much bigger?
Well, actually, what was left, if I remember right, what was left of a white wooden building. There was something there. You've got 100, or actually, is it 143rd? You've got the pond, and then the cemetery. I mean, now it's a fenced-in area, of course, with all the graves and that. But I believe at one time when the road, you could actually take the road in to the area, that there was some sort of a structure there, unless maybe I'm imagining.
Well, no, there were a lot of structures in the area, but eventually the Forest Preserve District would start to acquire the land to preserve it, and some of those structures would be taken down.
Right.
So I don't know what time period you may have saw the structure, or who knows, you maybe even saw the classic Phantom House. But which has a bit of information behind that. But yeah, there were quite a number of structures, and Bachelors Hall was one of the bigger ones, which I doubt you would have seen any. But again, you said you saw something smaller, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the main road that would actually go past the cemetery, kind of backtracking a little bit with the Indians, that actually used to be a main Indian trail.
Okay.
So eventually, when they used that as a main road, and so they would put down electric lines, gas lines, things like that. So that area was kind of heavily used for different purposes.
Well, now where the cemetery is, where it stands today, was there was I believe at one time there was a family farm, or there was some sort of a farm?
Yeah, there were a number of farms, actually.
Okay.
Now, I'm a steward with the Forest Preserve District, and we're helping to take care of that area around it. And
Right.
I also am able to, better know where some of the files are on the area.
Okay.
So I've had an opportunity to sift through some of the county files, and I did come across a lot of plat maps, official survey stuff, very precise. And, there were quite a number of structures. It's quite interesting. So, with, let's say with like the Phantom Farmhouse stuff, they always say that it's reported in all different kinds of areas around the main road, which is called the Midlothian Turnpike, around the main road that would go past the cemetery.
Right.
And, in some spots, you can find foundations, but in other spots, there's nothing.
Right.
And, I've heard stuff about people seeing things on 143rd Street as far as structures or even horses, various kinds of horse stories. But looking at the plat map records, what's interesting is that 143rd Street was not really developed or used at all. There used to be a barn right on top of the road, or what is the road now, by the cemetery. So, when people say they see structures and see these things, phantom or not, I mean, it's really weird. They really wouldn't know that kind of stuff is there.
Exactly.
One classic story of a structure out there, back in the 80s, there was a TV broadcast, and a guy named Ted Visnick came on, and he described a phantom farmhouse that him and his friends had seen collectively during the day. Mm-hmm. And I haven't spoken to him yet, which I will, but in the broadcast, he's pointing and walking toward where he saw this house, and if you go to where he says it is, you won't find any remains. You won't find foundations or anything like that. But what I found that really set me back is in the county files, in the wrong folder. It was like one folder up kind of thing. In the wrong folder, I found this plat map, and it shows an actual house, 20 by 30 feet, right where he was pointing.
Right.
And, the size, matches what he was saying, stuff like that. So, as far as the Phantom House stuff is concerned, I mean, yeah, maybe it's possible. Maybe people are seeing some things. I know I've seen a Phantom car that looked pretty solid to me. So, sure, why not? Any other questions on that?
Yeah, when they with the area itself, where the cemetery is, I mean, the cemetery area, at least what's there today, is a very small area. It's not that large.
Just 1 acre.
1 acre. There was, I mean, again, I would assume at one time there were structures there, and people, in looking through your website, people have been buried there all the way up until into the early 1960s. Isn't that correct?
Right. And generally, it was the 1960s. Then you have a rare one. It's an ash burial, which is 1989. But yeah, the 1960s is around when the party years were happening. That's when it stopped.
Right. So, in my understanding, wasn't there some sort of a some sort of a almost like a hospital or maybe not a hospital, but a halfway house that was there at one time?
Not for Bachelors Grove. I don't know if you're thinking about Oak Forest Hospital.
Right. That's.
But as far as Bachelors Grove is concerned, no, there was no real hospital.
Okay.
Unless you're thinking about the old legend of the what was that? The we all kind of know it's not real now, but it was like the hooked maniac escaped from the hospital. I don't know if you're mixing that up, but you know that story kind of got attached to Bachelors Grove too. So
exactly. So the cemetery that was there. I mean, today the place is very, as far as a cemetery goes. Matter of fact, like I said in my email to you, it's been 20, 30 years since I've been out there. I was back in Chicago about a month and a half ago, and we took a walk in there, and the place is really, really, really sad. I'm not an active paranormal researcher by any means. I'd like to get a little bit more into it. I did put my phone in the record mode while I was there. I need to kind of sift through some of the files that I have, but in slowly going through some of the stuff I have, I believe I have an EVP that actually picked up something. But the place is very distraught. I mean, when I walked in there, Pete, it's depressing. All the stones are turned over. When we were there, which I don't know if happens quite a bit, it looks like somebody might have even been, somebody was holding some sort of even a satanic type of ritual, a lot of bright red candles on top of graves or markers, and of course markers rolled all over the place. It's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I mean, there is a lot of the, like you say, with worshiping and stuff, there's a lot of stories attached to the place. And, back in the 60s and 70s, and now I'm getting reports for the 80s and mid-90s, but mostly with the 60s and 70s. I mean, police officers would come across animals hung or cut open, and with candles around them, stuff like that. They would dig up the coffins. They would take the bones out, spread them around. Do creepy things like that. That's knowing these stories and seeing the condition of the cemetery, the headstones, most of them are missing. Most headstones are just gone, even though some were relocated elsewhere to more better cemeteries. But it is sad just to see the condition of it. And, with the current fence that they have, it makes it look like an abandoned prison.
Right. Are there people there? Are there people actually still buried there?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
So, because again, the headstones are just looking at some of the pictures. Even on your website, on bachelorsgrove.com, you can tell it looks like over time, I know you have a pretty good timeline of photos, even over the past few years, things have been getting moved around quite a bit.
A little bit. There's just a couple headstones that seem to be popular that some kids like to toss around. And you got people that actually are trying to help, and they're trying to, upright the stones back on top of their bases. But, you're just always going to get kids that are going to want to, I'm assuming kids, but, they're going to want to tip things over. I even found a crowbar that was in the weeds that had the remnants of the marble from how they were, just prying the stone, just to tip it over.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, really, really a sad place. Do a lot of paranormal researchers go out there?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with October coming up, you'll probably literally see thousands of people.
Wow. Yeah. Well, again, when we went out there, it has changed the road, the walkway. I mean, again, I do, I kind of remember from way back when at one time, you correct me if I'm wrong, you could virtually drive to where the cemetery is.
Yeah.
And now you've got not a real long walk, but you got to hike back in there. But again, just I don't know, the feeling, I guess, is just very disheartening, not physically, but mentally when you go in there. You feel like there is a presence. You feel like it's maybe a very tortured type of presence in there.
Yeah, I don't personally get that too much. I mean, there's other people that definitely feel that. What I did find interesting, though, is that over the years, more often than not, people have this sense of peacefulness. and it's really odd. I've had people say to me many times, I can't even, it's countless times, how many people have said to me, I've never visited the place, but I feel very drawn to it, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the peacefulness part, you know, it is kind of odd, because normally you would get that foreboding or that sadness feeling. And, you know, for me, whenever that does happen, it's when I'm reflecting on what has been done to the place.
Right. Yeah, I can't say that when I was there, I can honestly say that I wasn't, you know, I wasn't scared. I didn't have any fear. I mean, I think the only fear I had is that you are kind of deep back in there, and I'd be more afraid of, you know, two-legged creatures maybe popping out of somewhere.
Right.
You know, if you ran into, you know, people doing drugs or drinking or something like that, I think that would be a little more scary than anything. But I didn't get a feeling of peacefulness. I just got a feeling of unrest back there. Like, man, look at this place. You know, it's just kind of decimated over. So, what's your group? Are your group? You head things up to kind of you're trying to clean it up a little bit and get it straightened up.
Yeah, back when I launched the website, I thought, you know, I might as well try something. You know, if it's going to have a web presence, maybe I can get some people together. We can maybe go in there, do some cleaning once in a while, that kind of stuff. And, you know, it took off really well. You know, I did have some resistance from the Forest Bureau District at first, because it has that taboo hauntedness to it, and I was 22 years old at the time, and they thought, what does a 22-year-old kid want to do with that? But, you know, I think, you know, over time they kind of saw that, you know, I'm serious about it. So, you know, that was back in 2000. So, you know, today things are much different. You know, I've gone through the classes, got the certification, and, you know, we're able to help steward the area now. And you know, we're making some progress, definitely. You know, things like the path still need to be cared for, but, you know, it's a time thing. You know, we all have our regular jobs, so, right. You know, it's all volunteer work. But, yeah, we're able to do some trimmings and long-term support for the cemetery itself. Because, you know, again, you know, volunteers, you know, it's a part-time thing. But as far as the cemetery, now we got people like the sheriff's program that, you know, the people that need community service hours, they'll go in, you know, start cleaning. In fact, probably in a couple of weeks we'll be back in there. But we're trying to get that more on a monthly basis. At least that's what one of the Cook County commissioners wanted. You know, I said, yeah, well, it's even twice or 3 times a year is fine. So yeah, big things are happening, and hopefully it can be turned back into more like a park-like atmosphere, something pleasant. Because, you know, like you say, that negativity, that feeling when you go back there, you know, if you feel unsafe, let's say, with the people.
Right.
It's not so much anymore. It seems like the more foot traffic we have, the less vandalism, and the less you feel, you know, that less you feel insecure. You
exactly.
know, if there's more than just, you know, you around. So, you know, you get like 5 or 6 people. I was just thinking of something, I just lost track of what it was.
Oh, it's okay. So there's Saturday night. Saturday, I'd be a little tired, but is like with the cemetery. I mean, with your group, I noticed on the site you have a lot of kind of maybe not sponsored events, but gatherings where people can go out and they can kind of work together. And it looks like you guys trim up a lot of stuff and clean up a lot of stuff. And
yeah. And then, you know, there was one time, you know, we saw a headstone in the water, which has quite a story to it. But, you know, people come out and they'll help us, you know, take a headstone out. We're trying to get some more. It's, you know, we have a lot of fun. You know, next month we'll have our annual picnic, or at least trying to make it more annual.
Sure.
And, you know, this one's kind of a big one, you know, just to honor everybody that's been helping out and stuff like that.
Pete, we got to take a break, and then we'd like to talk. We got another segment, an hour to go. I want to talk about maybe some of the weird things that have happened and the stories and stuff. So our guest tonight, Peter Crapia. Crapia. Peter Crapia. Bachelors Grove Cemetery, bachelorsgrove.com. We're honored to have him on the show and him giving up his evening for us. KTKK AM630 Salt Lake City, Inception Radio. If you want to jump on and chat, ask Pete some questions. We'll be back on the other side of these messages. everybody. Welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. Our guest tonight, Peter Crapia from bachelorsgrove.com. Bachelors Grove is a cemetery located on the south side of Chicago. It is one of the most hot paranormal places in the country. Actually, with all the reading and digging and stuff I've done, it's up in the top 5. So again, Pete, we're glad to have you here tonight. The lake or the pond that's in front of the cemetery, I hear a lot. I'm going to call them legends, stories, things that I've read. My understanding is, one, there are supposedly a lot of gravestones that have been tossed into the pond, and then I've also heard, and I don't know if it's more fable or tales, of actually people that have been killed in that pond.
Well, I've been looking into that every single year constantly, since I've been doing this kind of stuff. And the only thing I can come up with, I have nothing official on paper. No police reports, no nothing.
Okay.
Which is not surprising because sometimes you just can't dig some of that up. But, you're probably referring to the stories of the Al Capone dumping bodies, maybe.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Things like
exactly.
that, right. Now, without the paperwork, without an official piece of documentation, I do know one person that's credible that, as a child, they did see one body being fished out of the pond.
Okay.
But that's not in the 1920s or anything like that. Once in a while things like that do happen. There have been other murders right outside the cemetery, but as far as the pond is concerned, I can't get anything verifiable on paper. But with the Al Capone stuff, you'll hear a lot about how he would supposedly, drive by this car pull-off that would be on the north side of this pond off 143rd Street. That's mostly what you'll hear. And, if you look at the actual plat maps, like the one I was telling you with the barn that was sitting on the old road, that road did not exist in the 20s. None of that existed. You couldn't just pull up to it or anything. You'd be, going on private property. Obviously, the owner would know you're there, all that kind of stuff. I don't put too much weight in the Al Capone stuff. Yet, at least.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's got a history of, having weird things done, and as far as like the headstones, people, they do throw stuff in there. What I found interesting is there was one family member I spoke to this year. They relayed a story how they were really upset over how the kids were taking all the headstones. So they decided they're going to do their own thing. They're going to protect their relatives' headstone. They actually took it themselves and threw it in the pond.
Really?
Yep. So it shows you how far they'll go, even to protect them.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. With the, where the markers are, and again, if somebody's looking, if people that are listening, looking at your website, again, which the website is just fantastic. I mean, you can make an evening of going through it. Where the headstones are, I mean, are the caskets, are the bodies right there, or again, do you think that they've been moved around quite a bit?
Well, I mean, besides the ones that were dug up. But yeah, no, there's ones, you got the old stuff, they're still there, and then you got some of the newer stuff that has more of a concrete vault underground. Those are there. We do have the old plat map. We know how many generally are sold. Well, we know how many are sold. But we know generally how many areas are used, and how many were removed. The records of people being removed and relocated elsewhere are pretty decent, and there hasn't been too many, but yeah, there's still a lot of caskets there. Just a few years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I brought my sister back there for the first time. She's like, "Oh, I'm scared," and I'm like, "Oh no, it's okay, it's no big deal." Mm-hmm. So we're walking the path, and this guy comes pulling up on a motorcycle, the path that you're not supposed to be driving on. And, we pause and we look, and the guy's like, looking up in the sky, and he's got that southern voice, says, "Don't go back, there's dead bodies everywhere." She's getting scared, and I'm like, okay. And so we just keep walking, we get to the cemetery, and, I'm like, what, just stay here by the gates, I'm going to take a quick look around. I don't see any bodies. I'm like, this guy's full of it. But then I look over in the corner again, and I'm like, oh, no. And there, sure enough, there was a dug-up grave.
Really?
And it looked like the kids got to the casket as a lark and just took off, or maybe they got scared. I don't know. I took a photo, and that's about it. And obviously, the police weren't even concerned. I called the cops, and they didn't even come out. I guess it was such a regular occurrence there at this point that it's no big deal. I don't know. But, luckily people came by, and they were help filling back the hole and stuff like that. But, yeah, there's caskets that are still there, and some of them can get exposed easily, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, again, you can tell people are doing a lot of digging out there. Well, again, when we were there, again, the thing that was sad to see is there was a lot of we found torn clothes and a couple of markers with these very, very bright red candles. I would assume they're still there because we were just there literally a month or so ago.
Yeah, you probably saw. Yeah, I remember the red candle one. Yeah.
Yeah, the wax dripping all over the place and stuff like that. And obviously, I don't know if that's something that takes place at midnight or people out there in the in the dawn of or in the early hours of the morning. I have no idea, but that's pretty sad.
You can still run into them. You can you go in there and it's not necessarily like this big ritual. I mean, you'll have people there that are putting candles there and just kneeling down and praying, but it's a little disrespectful when you got candle wax dripping all over somebody's headstone.
Right.
But yeah, that's been happening. The candle stuff. You'll find people, just lighting them and leaving them. But there's other occurrences where you'll see them in a circle, and you just see weird stuff in the middle of the circle, and it's a little bit more. I don't want to call it negative, but it gives you that different weird vibe.
Sure.
So.
Sure. As far as going through the website, a lot of photos, a lot of pictures. Have you, as much time as you spend out there, have you ever seen anything weird yourself or caught anything weird yourself?
Yeah, I have, actually. Back, and this was in 1996, on my first visit, technically it was at night, but I didn't walk in the place. We just parked off by the 143rd Street pull-off. And buddy's like, yeah, we'll check out the next day. So the next day, comes, and it's the daytime. I finally get to walk in there, and I was kind of a camera geek. I was one of those guys who always had a camera in his trunk. So I grabbed the camera, and, if I visit a new location, I just film. So I'm out there, and I'm doing my filming. I'm not thinking, like, ghosts or anything like that. And, this is one of these old VHS cams that sit on your shoulder.
Uh-huh.
And it's got that black and white viewfinder, looking through it. And I saw, we got this big headstone out there called Fulton. It's this big monument, the only big one. And I thought I saw something just kind of moving back and forth. And I tilt my head, and I look with my eyes, and I don't see anything. I put my head back and look through the viewfinder, and I'm trying to look for it, and I don't see anything, so I just dismiss it. And, after I get home, I'm reviewing the footage, and my buddy's looking at me. He's like, holy, whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, what? He's like, well, look at this. And you see, and I remember the whole thing just played out. I remember this, and you see what looks like a big black brick. It's the best way I could describe it. And this thing's levitating, and it's going up and down, left and right. It's just totally swaying back and forth, in front of the stone. And before I pan out with the camera, this thing just goes around the headstone in midair.
Wow.
This whole thing, and so, that was probably my, since that was my first visit, that would be probably my first real experience with maybe seeing something, even though it was kind of through a viewfinder. And yet my eyes couldn't see anything.
Right.
But as time went on, then things got a lot weirder.
Did you capture actually the object moving?
Yeah, I did.
Is that on the website?
It will be put back on the website. I'm trying to get it, more in the proper resolution for today. It's that old 240 resolution of the old days.
Exactly.
But there's the video section has to be revamped. So that's just kind of stagnant. Sorry.
No. And then probably one of the most famous ghost pictures. The lady sitting on the stone. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, that's everywhere.
It's actually kind of a complicated story, but I mean the basics of it is that you have a group called the Ghost Research Society out of Oak Lawn in Illinois, headed by Dale Kaczmarek, and one of his members, they were out there with some infrared film, and they were just taking some shots. And they claim that, nothing was in view when they took the shot. But when she got it back, when she got the film developed, they're sure enough, right there on film, she's like, hey, well, we got something. They weren't sitting there.
Wow.
There is controversy surrounding it, quite a bit. But, and people debate, whether or not, that this lady's transparent or something like that. But, Dale holds firm that this is the real deal. This is definitely not hoaxed or anything like that. I have made attempts to speak with the lady that spoke, or the lady that took the photo.
When was it taken? About what?
1991.
91. Okay. And looking at the picture, the cemetery was obviously in a lot better shape back then. Not as
that's weird. Well, in the 70s, in '76, they took out the old fence to put in a new one, and there was a verbal agreement to maintain the cemetery. That's a whole other story that can go on. But so there was some maintenance, and it did look a little bit better during the 80s. But eventually, people weren't looking, and they decided, well, funds were better, used elsewhere, I guess.
Sure.
That kind of stopped.
Interesting.
But yeah, with that headstone shot, I mean, it's, I'm still 50-50 on it. I need to actually talk to the photographer. The closest I ever came, Dale could put me in touch with her, but she just doesn't want to talk to me on the phone, and I don't know why yet. But I was able to get, I believe it was the Travel Channel, to pay her to go on for an interview, because that's all I want for starters is an interview. And, unfortunately there wasn't much said in the broadcast because time is short on some of that stuff. But, I'd like to now, look at the negatives, the full role. It's, if this is the real deal, if this is not a hoax, I'm thinking that, definitely on that whole role of the negative, that lady's not going to appear. If she was a regular person as part of the group walking around, at some point she would be on that role.
Right.
So
in the panned out picture on the website, and again, the pictures you always tend to see posted by other sites are always the pictures up close. When you look at the panned out picture, and she's off to the left behind the tree, it looks like that could be a real person just sitting down and taking a break.
And it does. It does. If we take a look at some of the Sony night shot effect stuff with the infrared filter that people put on, and you can see through some clothing. If you look at, now that I have access to I have access to an actual print off the negative. That's another story. But, and I was able to get a really good zoomed-in view of this thing. And, the dress and stuff looks more transparent. The body, to me, does not look transparent. So it seems to have that same kind of effect with the infrared if you got the filters and stuff like that.
Right, and something else that I noticed just looking at the photo, I don't know if you've picked up on this, if you look at the zoomed-in photo, if you look at her legs and her feet, it appears to me that there's a shadow on the ground of her legs and her feet.
And there is. To me, there's a shadow. Even Kodak reviewed it. And there's a video on the website that you can watch. Actually, if you go to the paranormal section and select that photo on that same page, you'll be able to see the same video. And Kodak looked at it and they said, well, it does cast a shadow, and everyone thinks, well, maybe ghosts cast a shadow, but
right.
It's I mean, like I say, I'm 50-50 on it. I want to give her the benefit, and I want her, want her to come forward and speak to me. I'd like to see some of the material. But as it stands right now, I don't know. It's not looking good, but it is a very intriguing photo. It has made. It seems to be one of the more popular photos on the internet.
It's everywhere. I mean, when you search Bachelors Grove or even just ghosts, I mean, when you Google ghosts and hit images, it's always in there.
Yeah. They recently there was an application, one of these phone applications, that decided to use that same photo to make fake ghost photos.
Really?
They pulled it. Dale Kazmarek, made some noise and, let them know you can't be doing that. And you shouldn't be faking ghost photos anyway. But yeah, it's so popular that they picked that as one of the selections you can have.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Another one I found interesting, and you've got the film right on the website, is Lydia Montoya has and it looks like that was something that was picked up by the Travel Channel, is the apparition by the fence, and then actually
that misty looking thing around that wraps the fence.
Right, and you can actually hear it or see it moving.
Right. She claims that she heard the fence shaking, and that's why she decided to take that photo. Now, personally, I've been out there, and sometimes that fence has been shaking, and I couldn't figure out why. I just kind of dismissed it. Even though I couldn't see any animals, it's just one of those things I just dismissed it.
Right.
However, that particular area, for whatever reason, that entrance seems to have more activity of the, let's just say of that wispy type, that smoky-looking type, whatever people call MACDO or whatever. For some reason, I've seen it with my own eyes.
The smoke look, the
Yeah. I was out there one day and just talking to somebody, and not even about the paranormal, just a casual conversation with just a stranger. And I look up and I see a group of people by the fence. What caught my attention? But I look at the gate, and there's this big, thick white cloud, as wide as both of the posts of the opening. And I'm just staring at this thing, and I'm thinking dust cloud. But then, I realized pretty fast this isn't dust, and it's growing thicker to the ground. The thing's as high as the fence itself, and as wide, and the thing's, it's growing thicker, and I'm just in awe. And I've got a camera in my hand, but I'm just, I'm mid-conversation, I stop, staring at this thing. Suddenly, it decides to do some weird, like, the best way I could describe it in the center, when it did a spiral, it was like that DNA strand, the diagram for DNA.
Uh-huh.
It did this spiral in the center, jumps and off to the side, whatever, and it takes off down the path. I'm like, get the hell, and I go over there and I start kicking at the ground. The ground's wet, and moist, and there's no way it could have been dust. And well, having the websites, that just for that week, I ended up getting emails, people describing the same exact thing in the exact same spot, and only in one instance did they actually describe it was associated with. They say that there was a monk-like figure in the area, which we get reports like that too.
Did you get a chance, Pete, to take a picture?
No, and that's I kick myself for that. The camera is in my hand, and it makes me think back on stuff like that. It's like no matter how much equipment it seems that you have, maybe It's useless, because when you're in the moment, just in that moment, I could have taken the picture, but I didn't. You're just too much in awe.
Pete, we're going to take a break. We got an NBC News Break coming up in a couple of seconds here. Can you stick around for another hour?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Pete Crapia.
Crapia.
Crapia. Bachelors Grove Cemetery. Bachelor'sGrove.com from Chicago. KTKK AM630. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. NBC News.
NBC
Thanks,
News
Pete.
Radio. I'm Richard Louie. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to the second hour of the Fringe Radio Show. Good show tonight. Our sponsors, Gung Ho provides real brain energy, not a caffeine buzz. Go to www.k-talk.com and take a look at Gung Ho. One of our new sponsors, Utah Go Green Carpet Cleaning. They use the Host dry cleaning system. If you want carpets that are ready to go, you want rock solid quotes, just rates that blow everybody else away, no hoses coming through your door, no noisy truck running out in the driveway, go take a look at Utah Go Green Carpet Cleaning. Their website will be up and running here in a couple of days. You can call them at 801-808-3228. Schedule an appointment. Super, super good rates and just an awesome job. Sweet Home Chicago Pizza, 1442 East Draper Parkway, 123rd South in Draper, Utah, just east of 1300 East. They've got coupons on Tuesday nights. You can get a buy one, get one free pizza from 5 to 9 p.m. Go over there, say hi to Joe, tell him Fringe Radio sent you from K-Talk. 801-545-0455 is the phone number. Of course, we're live on the Inception Radio Network at InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Get online and chat. Chat's kind of quiet tonight, although a lot of kudos to Pete tonight for the work that him and his group are doing. Jack and Amanda Denton from Grayson Paranormal. We'd like to thank Amanda for all her help with the Fringe Radio Show blogging pages on ghosts. As always, we ask our callers to be respectful of everybody's beliefs. You can go out to www.k-talk.com, go to the host or schedule page, and click over to the Fringe Radio page. We've got a lot of stuff on there. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. If you've got a story, experience, sighting, a cemetery, a UFO, dealy, something that happened to you, something you want to talk about, go out to our webpage and contact us, and we'll get back to you. Next week, our guest, Tom Carey, RoswellInvestigator.com is his website. We're going to have Tom on. But back to our current guest tonight. Pete, welcome back. And again, thanks for giving us some time to talk about Bachelors Grove.
Yeah, no problem.
We were talking a little bit before the news break again about the photos and the pictures. Of course, the the most famous one is the one that was taken in 1991. The woman sitting on the pedestal. What's some other ones that are kind of unique or definitely draw a lot of attention?
Well, obviously that one draws the most attention, but others nowhere near as much attention. Although some should be given attention to. There are a few. There's one on there. It shows looks like, I forget whose photo it was again, but it shows like this mist on a path. Some people claim that they can see a figure standing in there, but this particular path where this mist was, I had actually heard my first ghostly voice with my own ears, which was really cool. And so certain photos like that I think deserve attention because they're to me they're real. The negatives are sent to me. I know the people, generally know the people or whatever. Some other stuff, there's some video, but as far as photos go, I mean, you get all that orb stuff, and I don't put too much weight into it.
Right.
The ones I like the most are the ones, let's say, that are motion video, or if it's a daytime shot with no flash taken, it's worthy of looking at. But as far as anything like really that stands out, there isn't, unfortunately. And you think with a place like that, with its reputation, you would have more. But there does seem to be a lot of rational explanations for these things, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's a shame, like maybe I couldn't have gotten a shot of the mist I saw.
Right.
Maybe there'd be people out there that wouldn't believe it. But, maybe there's a lot of people out there like me that just don't have the camera on them, or it's just something happens and they don't get the shot. Right. So,
well, the one I've got that I'm going to go ahead and run through Adobe, and I will send it to you. When I was out there, we took where we stood, and I actually took a picture on my iPhone. I had my recorder going. Is the Fulton marker with the baby daughter next to it? Pardon me?
It says infant daughter, yeah.
Right, infant daughter. When we went out there that day, somebody which I've read or heard is common. There were some little toys placed around the infant's marker.
Right. Yeah, that's become common past 10 years.
Right. There was some toys there. There was a rosary laid on the other side of the Fulton marker. On the front of the Fulton marker, it looks like there was something there at one time, but then it was maybe pried off. And people obviously went up to the Fulton marker and they drew on it. There was actually ink that was drawn on it. But what's really interesting, and again, I'll get this in Adobe and get this to you. I was standing there with my stepdaughter, and we had the iPhone on. We let it run the entire time we were there. And I just told her, I said to her, it's really sad that somebody has to come do these things, and write on it and stuff like that. I said, it's just nothing but, very, very disrespectful. Now, I didn't hear anything when I said that to her, but there is a pause between me saying that and then her saying, yeah, she said, and then that's where she mentions about the toys. Well, when I play this recording back, and I apologize that I don't have this set up for tonight.
That's okay.
When I said this is very disrespectful, I didn't hear it physically when I was there, but on my iPhone it picks up in clear as day. It says, that's right.
Excellent.
So I will go ahead and convert that to a file, and I'll put this in Adobe. And we recorded about probably 20 minutes. There's a couple things that I thought I heard, but the that's right was absolutely as clear as day. Didn't hear anything there. Very peaceful back in there. I mean, it's very tranquil, even though it was a little bit of a windy day. There's not much wind back there, and the humidity is really high back in there, so everything lays pretty dead. Not to make a joke.
But it seems like you got a response to a question that you didn't really mean. You weren't really asking as a question, but you got a response. Kind of on cue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've got a couple people that, they were volunteers. They're more into the paranormal investigations, but they come out and they help clean up the place. And they approached me. They're like, well, we got this voice on our recorder. It was one of their telephones. I'm like, okay, so I listened to it, and you didn't even need to hear it close. are you the one who just scared my friend Doug? And you hear this voice come out of nowhere. Yes. It is absolutely creepy. And, and that was actually next to the Fulton Stone when that took place.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. People want to flock to, let's say, the biggest object in the cemetery, but there seems to be something around this big monument, this stone, where a lot of activity does occur. Quite a bit.
Now, has there ever been photos taken? I actually did some searching on the Fulton marker, and I really didn't come up with much. Are there any photos or any mists or orbs or anything kind of strange around that thing at all?
Around the Fulton Monument?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Nina Jankowski, she recently had taken a photo there. She was there at night, even though it's taboo. People don't be out there at night. You get a ticket. But she was out there at night, and she said she was having some difficulties with her camera, and she felt compelled to take a picture in that direction as well. And so once her camera was feeling normal, or was normal, and she could take the picture, it developed this weird yellow. I don't even know how to describe it, really. If you actually go to bachelorsgrove.net, that's our recreational center aspect site, in the paranormal history section, you'll see this photo. And it's just like this yellow, I just can't describe it. It's like a huge sparkly thing. And, I had an experience out there one time at the Fulton Monument. I had one of these, I was getting sick of 35 millimeter film, because it's so expensive to develop. And so I got one of these cheap digitals at the time. And so I'm trying it out. And as I'm right to take the photo, hit that button, I'm looking at the stone, and it just flashed. There was a person just standing there in yellow
at the Fulton
at the Fulton Stone, just there as I'm pushing the button.
Wow!
And so I look at the little viewfinder, and I'm looking up and I'm looking back and I keep up and down, reviewing the area. I'm like, what is this yellow thing? And I know I just saw a person, but there's nothing there. I'm standing there looking at the area. There's nothing there.
Right.
And it wasn't until later when I heard or read and I researched the stories of supposedly a yellow man that people see.
Hmm.
And
I'm on your page now. I'm on bachelorsgrove.net. Where is the?
It says paranormal history.
Okay.
Did you click on that yet?
Yes.
Okay, at the very, very bottom of the page, it's the easiest reference.
Is where all the photos are, huh?
Well, actually, there's stuff all over it. It gives you a background of all the popular stuff, the popular legends. But for this particular one, it'll be at the very bottom in reference to the yellow man. It's possible because it just happens to be that the photo that was taken has all this yellow stuff involved with this one girl who took the photo. So it just came up in discussion. Does it have any relation to it? Because it happens to be in that area.
Interesting. Oh, I see. Okay. It's Nina Jankowski that took it. Almost looks like an angel or two angels.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, I thought maybe it was a cigarette butt. Somebody's flicking a cigarette, and and I tried to replicate it a little bit, and I couldn't. So that was kind of nice. I mean, we got something tangible to look at and maybe study. From what I can find out, it's not fake. It wasn't, obviously it was not. I know it wasn't altered or anything like that. So it's an interesting photo.
Very, very interesting. With the going back to the pond, has there ever been any talk about trying to get somebody in there to take a look at what's in that thing or dig?
All the time, people want to try that. It's one of the biggest questions. Actually, back in the day when I went to talk to the forest preserves back in 2000, somehow I didn't even mention it, but somehow the subject came up of draining the pond, and they said, "Oh, that'll never happen." But I'm sure maybe as time goes on and we want to try to recover headstones, that maybe something similar can happen. I really wouldn't want to drain it to, I worry about the animal life and things like that. But there actually was, I'm thinking about it, there was one guy in Chicago who claims to have picked up a vibe, he says, from a child or something like that, and he walks into the pond waist deep. And he picks up a Liberty $50 or Liberty dollar.
Uh-huh.
And, he claims that there was this object that he picked out of that pond.
Wow.
I can't validate the story, but there was supposed to be a newspaper reporter there. I did track down, part of the reporter, where he was working and stuff like that, and yeah, it turned out that this, they were there that day, and the guy says he's pretty psychic, so who knows?
My understanding too is that pond is awfully deep,
and it's not as deep as probably people think it is. I'm actually going to do some depth stuff to it. It was supposed to be this year, but I'll do it next year.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one area that looks to be about 10 feet, but the rest of it seems to be 4 or 5 feet. And if you actually go near 143rd Street, it gets pretty shallow. In fact, that pond, because 143rd Street wasn't there, that pond actually used to be much bigger.
Okay.
But on that end, it was kind of shallow.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's an eerie place. Again, the pond is interesting because and maybe I'm sure with all the work that you do, you read about all these things. But some of the stories that I've heard about the pond in deaths, at least, I heard one story, some fable. It kind of went along the lines of, I believe, a horse-drawn carriage or something was drawn into it.
Yes, I was waiting to see if you'd ask that one.
Right, and maybe you could shed some light on that.
Well, that one comes from Dale Kazmarek. He's the one who spoke to some witnesses on this thing, and there's not too much variations, but basically the story goes that some officers were in the area one night, and they said they saw this farmer with his horse, and he was on one of these plows that you stand on,
mm-hmm.
and they said that this apparition came up out of the pond, up onto the road, in view of their headlights, stuff like that, and then kept crossing and went into the woods across the street. There's where there's variations on the story, but where there was written in books. But generally, the most reliable comes from Dale Kazmarek, and that's the basics of the basic storyline of that. I don't know how you'd see something come out of the pond in that area, personally. But, people do question why would you be plowing in general, and, there should be no reason. Well, there probably was, because, like I say, there was a barn and stuff right there, and there was farming that was going on. So yeah, there would be some legitimate reasons why they may have seen maybe the part where, saying, yeah, we saw it come out of the pond, maybe that's incorrect, because you got a lot more people besides these officers who see this on 143rd Street.
Mm-hmm.
So is this just a glimpse of the past? Not necessarily something bad happening. I mean, the story goes with the horse in the pond is, it drowned.
Right.
And, I can't find any solid documentation for that. Dale swears by it that he read it and it's in his files. But, it's to me, it could have been, maybe it's for a different location. Maybe it was a mistake. I don't know. But it's, to me right now, it's hearsay. As far as are even the stories, even if it was true, are they attached to each other? I mean,
sure.
That would be a negative event or something that some weird event that maybe can be bringing out something paranormal. But from my experience in that area, it seems to be more like not haunted or anything necessarily bad, but it seems like time is different. I can't really explain that, but it just seems like you're getting glimpses of time in weird ways.
I agree with you. Well, it's like now, of course, there's been articles, and I'll just tell you my experience. The Purple House or the Blue House. Actually, I worked for the state of Illinois out at Moraine Valley Community College years ago. I think it's a 4-year school now. I used to work out there at the data center way back when. And I used to work midnights, so a lot of times I would make it a point to go through there back in 81, 82. And all I can tell you is I can't say that I saw the Purple House or the Blue House for sure, because the nights that I went by, it was either snowing or it was summertime or it was nighttime, of course, very dark. One time I went by just thinking about what I was running late for work. I had to get to work. And when I looked over, I will tell you this, I saw it. Or I shouldn't say I saw the house. I saw something blue or purple glowing there.
But you're not sure if it was a house or something?
I don't know what it was, but there was a light in there, and it was it wasn't a low light. It was a very distinctive light.
The light in general you're talking about. You're not like, okay, because, I mean, we have the blue light phenomena that takes place out there. Not so much anymore, but it was pretty heavy at one point.
And what was that now? What was up with that?
Well, there's actually quite a bit to that. That would probably take another hour discussion, and they can actually read about that at bachelorgrove.net. Mm-hmm. But the basics of that is that there's this light that it comes in different shapes. It's like a circle light. People would normally call them orbs these days. But this thing would be pretty bright, and it would just travel around either up and down the old Midlothian Turnpike right outside the cemetery on the south side, or, it would travel different parts of the roads on the outskirts of the cemetery. In one instance, I'm still tracking down to see how reliable this is, but it seems to be pretty reliable. There was a school teacher at a religious school, and when he was younger, him and his buddies decided to go out to the cemetery by this car pull-off by the pond. They heard about stories of this blue light that's supposed to be out there. And supposedly there were these 3 kids missing, or 2 kids. But whichever, these kids go missing, and then they were found later, and all they could talk about is this blue light. So that's why they would go out there. And they're down by the pond, they're joking around, doing whatever, and then they see this blue light, and they thought that it was just a regular old guy. They thought that was the whole purpose. It was just some guy with a light. Mm-hmm. But then they see this light traveling toward them, coming over the pond. Wow. Just right at them. So they take off, run up this hill, get back in their car, and they take off. And this blue light is following them. So the driver turns his head to look at the light, and then they used to have a lot of cornfields out there, and he went off the road a bit, into the cornfield. Car stalled, and they're all just kind of reflecting on what just happened, and then the blue light just reappears right in front of their car.
Wow! It
circles around a bit, and then it takes off and goes into the woods. We've had officers. Most won't, go public. Let's say go on the radio or something like that. But you'll run into them and you'll talk to them, and there have been a lot of stories handed down by them or to them, about this light. And there are times, like in the case of this teacher who used to give this speech in school. That's how this got out. Somebody recorded the speech, and the cops would even not want to chase this light, and then some would chase the light on rare occasions. Actually, his story actually was that the cops chased the light. But all the cops I talked to, they said that no, we wouldn't chase this light. We knew something was wrong with it. It wasn't normal.
Right.
There was even an occurrence one time of somebody going out there, and some kids, they were able to drive back there, and they got caught by the cops. But what was happening that night was that they found a casket set on fire.
Wow.
And so when the cops came and they were investigating, and the kids are getting in trouble for being back there, they're like, there's this light over here in the woods, and the cops are very nervous about it. They didn't even want to go in and investigate this thing. Was
it the kids that tried to light the casket, or
no, they didn't do. Well, they claim they didn't do it. I don't think they did it. In the archives at bachelorgrove.com, you can actually listen to an actual radio broadcast. Richard Crow out of Chicago, he used to be on the radio a lot and talk about stories, and of course Bachelor's Grove was one of those places. And it just so happened that the eyewitnesses came forward on the radio and spoke about it, one of them, and it hit the newspapers too, in the Tribune. So their story is kind of panning out, and they're claiming, no, we swear we didn't do it, even though they were caught with shovels in the back of their trunk.
Right, yeah.
It's probably not a good idea to show up at a cemetery with shovels, but these blue lights are, I kind of put a little bit of weight into it. I think there was something going on back then. I don't really believe that these were just police headlights rotating around, because police headlights don't chase you.
Sure. Do they? I mean, well, again, when I saw it, Pete, I don't. I want to say that it was not blue, but more of a purple color, and it appeared to be a structure. Again, this was 80, 81, 82.
It was within a structure. That's what I was trying to figure out, if you saw just a light or if it was within a structure. Or...
No, it was from. Again, it was just a matter of microseconds that I looked over. It was actually a structure. Well, the reason why I knew I wasn't crazy, what I saw is it actually was bright enough that you could see the fence along the pond. You could see the fence there, and that's a long way back in.
Yeah.
And I was heading westbound. I looked over to my left, and I saw that. But that was the only time. And then I made it a point, for literally month after month to go there as I went to work at 11:30 at night, and I never saw anything again. I know one night I did see lights, but I think it was people with flashlights or candles or something.
Sure,
in
right.
there. One of my questions here, just switch gears a little bit. There's a lot of homes right around there. Has anybody ever gone and knocked on the doors or talked to some of those residents? I mean, there's some of those houses that are literally just hundreds of yards away.
Well, I mean, I haven't done it, except for I've spoken to the people that live inside of this one house next to these cell phone towers right outside the entrance to the main path. No, not that I know of. None of them have come forward. Nobody's told me that they've spoken to them. Now, the people that live in the house by the cell phone towers, I guess they can vouch for some weird stuff. As far as like their chickens being stolen at one point and finding them dead inside the cemetery. Mm-hmm. As far as anything ghostly, short of they saying their own house is haunted.
Really?
Yeah, they're pretty open about it. They're people ask if they could park there at night, just like a sneak in the place. So don't do that, folks. They don't like that.
Right.
But I do get emails from people that do live in the general area, and they say that some weird stuff happens, beyond the cemetery. Like, they thought maybe somehow it was tied into the area, because you've got stories that go back. I forget how far, but there's an area off of the Midlothian Turnpike that's still in use in Central Avenue where somebody saw a phantom car, and it hit them, and they heard the crushing sounds of the accident, and they get out and there's nothing. There's no other car. There's no damage to their car. So it doesn't seem to be tied just to the cemetery. There's generally around that area there's weird stuff happening.
Interesting. Very interesting. Has anybody ever gone in there? Well, obviously, the paranormal group's probably. Anybody gone in there with infrared or anything like that, or heat detection stuff back in there to see? I mean, I assume that I think Ghost Adventures even did a thing. A&E's done. I mean, there's been quite an onslaught of people that have, or at least television shows that have gone back in.
Every year there's television or of course radio, mm-hmm. and then newspapers. It just goes on and on. But yeah, people have gone back there with all sorts of equipment, even with permits, which takes a lot of work to get those. Ghost Adventures was out there this year, which should air, I believe, next month. As far as the cameras go, somebody actually invited me one time when they got a permit, and I'm like, sure, I'll go along. And I set up the camera on a tripod, and I turned off the infrared lights, but I put the Sony camera infrared, night shot mode. And I thought, well, if these ghost lights are ghost lights, then why would I need infrared, lighting to illuminate the area?
Exactly.
So I do this. I set it up as a test, and sure enough, at one point, you see this big, bright ball moving around inside the cemetery, well above where people are standing. Now, nobody was taking pictures at the time except for one, which was great. So if you freeze frame it, you can get a general outline of the entire area, where the tree lines are, how thick all the, this is one of those times of year where it's still very thick, and once you get to know the area, you know that this thing is, inside the cemetery, not somewhere else. And it fades in and out. And it's just like this ball of light on infrared.
Are you going to put some of that on the...
That's still part of the video section. So, yeah, when I bring back the video section, that'll definitely be available. That to me is probably, more interesting than the first one I had with that weird black levitating thing.
Yeah.
Even though I was able to look with my own eyes, as far as an investigative thing, nothing with my eyes but something on camera, that kind of validates something weird's going on. This one's like, do orbs exist? Well, or balls of light. And, you got this situation where there's nothing reflecting. It's just pitch dark. And you're getting this ball of light moving around.
Very interesting. Are you scared of the place?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Yeah,
like I said, I grew up with some paranormal stuff. People will call it probably poltergeist-like activity. And I was like 14, and me and my mother and other people in the house, we watch objects floating around the room. I mean, for investigators, that's like, I guess, a dream. But to me, it was just weird but normal, and I always wanted answers.
Mm-hmm.
Always wanted answers. So this kind of stuff just, I guess, naturally doesn't scare me, fortunately. And it's and I have a lot of hobbies. So Bachelors Grove is a great place for me to be. It isn't just all about the paranormal for me, but being out there, when this stuff does happen, it's more exciting than for me. It's nowhere near scary.
Sure. Any of your volunteers you ever have people that are out there working, doing cleanup, and they just take off? They don't want to deal with it, or things have happened?
No, nobody gets scared or anything like that. You'll find some that say that they feel a weird presence, like somebody was standing right next to them when nobody wasn't. No, nobody was.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's so far nobody's run away. I've seen cases of people running out of there. They get scared and they just run.
Right.
And it just so happened, I was there one day when one of these happened, and I, got the actual story, and it relates to this lady. Supposedly, she saw this yellow man, but she was seeing him consistently, and everyone thought she was kind of nutty or something, or something to that extent, and she just, she took off. She just couldn't handle it anymore. Her family didn't believe her, but she kept seeing this thing. And she says she never heard of the stories and stuff like that. So, yeah, it does happen. They just run out, but not the volunteers.
Not the volunteers. Do you? One of my other questions was, do you looking through the website? I see there was at one time 140 people buried there, or 137 it appears. Are there a lot? I mean, what's the number now? Or is it still high like that? Or
I'm constantly going through all my records to find out who's been put elsewhere. Actually, I could probably answer that in a few seconds, but I thought it was 160 something at this point.
Obviously, there must be a lot of people there that have no markers.
Yeah. Most of them are gone. It's most are bases, not even headstones. So yeah, actually, it is at 137. You're right. But they hopefully we can get. We're hoping to get like a memorial marker of some kind, just a big stone, cut it flat, and just write some stuff on it and give the place a new fence. I mean, it's sad that we can't get. As far as restoration goes out there, restoring the area, we can just restore the beauty, but we can't bring back the old headstones.
Has there ever been talk about maybe just relocating all the bodies out of there?
Oh yeah, there's the county guys they don't like the hassles that it brings. So, but they'll never be able to do it. I guess there was an attempt, and then I got word of it, and they were stopped because of legal reasons. They thought that if they just took down the fence and took the headstones and left the bodies, that nobody would come anymore.
Right.
Now, even if they did that, it's not. People would still show up.
Sure.
It's legally, technically, it's not even a cemetery.
Wow. Hey, Pete, we've got to take a break here in 20 seconds, then we'll go to our final segment.
Okay.
Our guest tonight, Pete, your last name?
Is Crapia.
Crapia. The website, bachelorsgrove.net or bachelorsgrove.com. KTKK AM630 in Salt Lake City. Pete, we appreciate you being here. Just take a quick break. We'll be right back. Get yourself a soda. Inception Radio Network, again, KTKK, k-talk.com. All right, everybody, and welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. Pete, back for the last 20 minutes or so. So we're talking a little bit before the break about actually moving the bodies or moving what's there. And again, you were going to go ahead to state that the place is really not, I guess we'd say, zoned an actual cemetery.
Right. It's not registered as a cemetery in Illinois. So actually a lot of laws don't even apply. But they'll never relocate stuff. Of course, they'll make a lot of noise. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of people out there. They'll always it'll always be there. And recently how the cemetery came about and how the county owned it is a little complicated. But in the end, it's actually not even Forest Preserve property. It's owned by something called the Cook County Real Estate Management Office. And we're trying to get it donated to the Forest Preserve District. And they actually went through, did a new survey of the area, and went through all the legal documentation. I had a meeting with the head of the Forest Preserves on it. They'd love to take the property, but they just don't want to be responsible for bodies.
Right.
So again, there you go. Just another agency that doesn't want to be responsible. But they're not going to be able to do anything, negative like that. Take the bodies out or stuff like that. They're just, but things are changing. It's a good thing. It's a real good thing. They're going to go in there. They're going to clean up. They finally went through the proper legal stuff with the cemeteries that they do own with the Forest Preserve District, and so they're hoping that, or at least in discussion, it's hoped that Bachelors Cemetery will be part of it, and no longer will there be fear of the removal.
Right. I actually got a couple questions sent in on the chat, and I actually had a caller call in and leave a message for you, see if you can answer them or get your feelings on them. The first question was, do phantom objects seem to belong to a specific time period, meaning, the cars and the houses? Was there a specific year or time period that activity seemed to be pretty high, or is it just something that's consistently going on?
Well, yeah, it seems to be consistent as far as the phantom stuff goes. Now, the time period of what you might be seeing, it would be kind of a different matter. Mm-hmm. But yeah, even to this day, I can vouch that the stuff is still going on.
Another question is paranormal activity or just activity in general high at this point in time still in the cemetery? Yeah,
it is. It is. I mean, you get a lot of people that will say one thing, maybe get some vibes, but once you start to see a pattern, like I talk to a lot of people out there, and I get a lot of emails, and you start to see a pattern. All these people don't know each other necessarily.
Right.
So just because they don't come forward with some ultimate proof on a photo or something like that, doesn't mean something isn't happening.
Oh, again, I can attest that when I went out there and actually walked through those gates, I had a peaceful feeling, but a very I felt that these people were somewhat, I don't want to say the word demonized, but just a lot of discontent. Just again, a lot of turmoil from what happened. Again, with the destruction of the grave, with the markers and what have you. Another question is, with the paranormal groups that go out there, caller question was, do you get a lot of anomalous or high EMF signatures or a lot of other odd readings in the devices when they go out there and scout around?
Well, yes, there's probably there's a lot of different kind of devices people use. Some are reliable, some are not so reliable. But there is a pattern to certain areas of the cemetery where these meters seem to be going off erratically.
Well, and what areas would that be?
Well, okay, you've got, it's hard to describe on the radio, but if the north center of the cemetery has a lot of fluctuation. It's kind of near the Fulton Monument, more east of the monument. You've got the entrance to the cemetery itself. Again, there's been a lot of reports of activity too, so there might be some relationship there. Now, the southwest corner, generally in that area where happens to be the lady in the headstone photograph kind of area, and a little bit beyond, that has a lot of equipment malfunction. And I've had an experience out that way as well.
What stone is she, or who is that? Where the photos?
We don't know whose actual stone that belongs to. It has been moved a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit since that photo was taken.
Gotcha.
We can just kind of generally nail down whose plot that was purchased for. But what we see on the plat maps and how many people within an area are two separate things.
Gotcha. Another question is, again, a lot of people. Actually, a couple emails came in that kudos to you and your group for doing what you do. So, again, hats off to you. One lady, actually, her question is, when you guys are out there working and cleaning up, does the group in general get a good sense of feeling that they're doing something good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we get that a lot.
Okay, that's kind of being projected to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Very interesting.
And even the people that are a little nervous about visiting, they feel like, well, if we come, we help out, we clean up.
Right.
Maybe they'll, the ghosts will, not bother us if we come back later at a different time. And that's nice. It's cute.
The other question is, and this is one I had too on my notes. Are there any open plots, meaning that people that have bought plots in there that could burials still take place?
Well, that's where it gets tricky. Now, yeah, on the plat map, it clearly shows a big section that is unsold. Mm-hmm. And, well, was considered unsold at the time, even though a lot of it was just donated, legally. Wait, what was the full question again? I'm sorry.
Are there still open plots, meaning that do people still own? Are there?
Well, yeah, they would. If they keep a legal record, of course, they can still retain that ownership. They got to prove who they are and stuff like that. Can you still be buried in there? I don't know if that was part of the question.
Right. That was it.
Okay.
Can you still be buried?
That's where it gets tricky because legally it's not registered as a cemetery. So you probably could, but it'd be really hard. It would probably take a lot of. You need to get a lawyer, basically.
Right. Because some people do actually own that property.
Yeah, they do. Right.
Or they have a legal deed. Another question that came through is, which is interesting, again, from some of the locals, which means they're going through the site and looking through their info. What happened to the sign?
Which sign? The one that said Bachelors Grove Cemetery?
Yeah.
That was just vandalized.
Has that been gone for a long time?
Yeah, that's not even the original sign. I haven't verified it yet, but it appears as if Boy Scouts had put that up at some point.
Okay.
Because that was a heavily used area for one of their trails. And eventually somebody vandalized it, got knocked down, and then as the story goes, people were taking pieces of it, and it just kind of disappeared on its own. We're trying to get another sign back out there. An Eagle Scout group tried this year, but the Forest Preserves wasn't interested at this point in time.
So you have to, when you guys go out there, and I notice on your photos, when you go out there and you clean up and you do the burn and all that, and do you have to obviously, that you just don't go out there and start lighting fires and stuff?
No.
Obviously, that's got to be very controlled.
It is very controlled. That's why you got to, go through the classes and know how fire behaves and stuff like that, and know exactly what you're cutting down. And the reason for burning is, so that we don't, a lot of the stuff that we cut down is going to have seeds. And if you're dragging that, around, you're going to be spreading those seeds, and you're just kind of defeating the purpose of what you're doing. It's just going to get, wilder and crazier. So when you cut the stuff down, you put it in a pile, and then you just kind of burn it. We have backpack sprayers. We have all the equipment that we need. We pick our spots where it's safe, stuff like that. We rope things off. The general public can't really go near us. And it's fun, especially during the chilly times of year. So, if you wanted to volunteer and come out, that's this time of year is a great time. You can keep warm, less bugs, and just great atmosphere.
Gotcha. Another question, maybe it's just from somebody who's looking at the site here, the Bigfoot Trail. Any Bigfoot hunters out there?
Well, you see, you're talking the Bigfoot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Only recently. There was one guy who decided that he saw Bigfoot out there, and I know there's no credibility to it. But anyway, that's a recent phenomena. Just because there is a trail out there called that, but as far as any real reports,
right,
it's very, very recent.
Right. Here's another question for you. Do you think that the hauntings, for the most part, are intelligent or residual from your investigations and reports? Meaning that are they current and are they intelligent current hauntings or residual hauntings from maybe a time?
Well, that's where it gets confusing for me. A lot of my personal experience has to do more with time is different. Some people might call that residual.
Right.
But, it seems like using the word residual, for most people it seems to be like something negative happened, or maybe something was a repeated pattern over and over again in real life, and it's repeating over and over again in a paranormal way. Some of these cases don't seem to be always repeating in the exact same spot, in the exact same way, like a loop. It's something different, almost like you're dealing with parallel realities. Almost all of them are maybe exactly the same, but things are occasionally popping in and out that we can see. As far as anything haunted or something bad, I'm a little confused by it, especially with the EVP stuff and hearing voices. I don't know what that all means.
Right.
There was a case where, I go out there a lot, but I don't get that feeling really to, compelled, show up really strong. But one day I just had this really compelling feeling just to show up. And I'm like, okay, so I go with it. Sometimes that happens when I'm elsewhere, and I just kind of show up, and I get to the cemetery gates, and this is the first time and only time this ever happened, and the best way I can put it into words is that I felt all as one with everything. I'm standing there, and it's like the temperature went away. I couldn't feel anything. I'm just looking around in awe. I'm like, this is so cool. Mm-hmm. It's like I am like connected with the ground and the trees. I'm like, this is so cool. And I get this feeling, walk down this path behind you. And I'm like, okay, just that feeling. So I start walking, and this is where I start feeling like I'm going crazy. I'm looking at the ground. I'm still feeling like it, really, really good and everything. Not like a buzz, but it's just this weird feeling. And I'm looking at the ground, and and you realize what I'm doing. I'm looking for these like traps, like the strings across the path attached to logs. I'm like, this is crazy. This is ruining my mood. And I just get this feeling, keep on walking. Okay. So I keep walking. And that's where I just hear, clear as day, like somebody less than 10 feet from me, a woman's voice, say, do you still see him? And I whip around, and I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going crazy.
Right,
I'm looking for traps, and I'm hearing voices. I'm leaving. It was the shortest visit I ever had there. And now the next day I get an email, and somebody said that we thought you should know that we found these traps set on this path. And it looked like these set by kids, strings attached to logs. I'm like, no way. So, I'm thinking to myself, as far as like, when we're talking about haunted stuff, this is where I get back to the time thing. It's almost as if maybe, possibly, this is just me thinking, was there a point, it seemed like there was a precognitive event of knowing that there were traps already going to be there. And then you got this voice that wasn't necessarily talking to me. It was like talking to somebody else. Do you still see him? Was I considered a so-called ghost in another wherever?
Sure.
And maybe if I was facing that voice, maybe I could have seen them. Again, to me, it just comes back to this time thing. Maybe I don't know. But I can't explain things like like the people that see monks or something like that. So it kind of varies. It's like a smorgasbord of different things.
Another question is, do you ever get this came in from our listeners, do you ever get the feeling that that maybe the buried or the dead that are there kind of regard you as the guardian or the keeper?
Well, I hope not, because I just want to do some good,
Sure.
It's, I never get that feeling, but there are times it does seem kind of weird where, I feel like, when I'm getting so much pressure and I can't get certain things done, I just want to give up, and it seems like something just kind of pushes at me, and I just kind of joke in my head wondering if something like that had something to do with it,
Sure. Where do you live at, Pete, if you don't mind me asking?
I live in the Palos area.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because my mom still lives. She's in Oak Forest. Like I said, we visited there just a month ago. She's off 155th and Central, and like we were there. Figure we do this show, we gotta make it a point to get in there. I know when I was younger, I was there a lot, and never at night. Never desired. You ever go out there at night?
Yes, I have. When I was much younger. Of course, I wouldn't do that today. But people invite me out there when they got permits. That's fine. But yeah, I have gone out there at night, and I've had some weird stuff happen, and you know, it's different.
Sure.
Definitely different. But I mean, if you're looking for experiences, you know, daytime, you know, seems to be just as good or even better.
Gotcha. So, our time is really short. One last question. Sedona, Arizona is famous for the portal effects of different dimensions. Do you think these ghost house sightings would be compared as such an experience?
Maybe. There's I don't know about the portal part. I mean, I kind of play around with some other things, you know, and I could be wrong once my research is getting more complete. But we do have a radar installation near the area that I wonder if it has any weird mystical effects.
Right. Are you talking the one that's down by the by the Gaelic Park over there?
Yeah.
And the nuns. There's that the sisters or the nun thing there?
Yeah, there is a church or something nearby there too.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you know, there's different areas in Chicago where I'll be talking to people, and they say they have these effects and weird things going on, and it seems to be coincidence, but it's near these exact same towers. Now, these towers are used for the FAA.
Right.
But they put out a lot of power.
Right.
A lot of power, like 750,000 watts with a 1 megawatt peak, and if you're in the radio, you'll understand that's a lot of power.
Sure. Hey, Pete, we got to wrap up. We got about 30 seconds. I want to thank you. We're honored to have you tonight. I hope we can schedule you again in the fall, maybe around Halloween, and maybe get some people from the Oak Lawn Group to come on with you as well.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay, again, your website, bachelorgrove.net.com. Pete, again, thank you so much. We'll keep in touch. And again, we're honored to have you, and thanks for a great evening.